Hey, I'm Jordan.
And I'm Ashley. We're the founders of For the Good, a community created to empower and elevate you to live a purpose-driven life.
Our mission is to bring light into our world, and to do so, we have learned that it must start within.
We are so glad to have you here with us. Hi guys, this episode is for those who have a fire in your heart to make your dreams come true. For those who know they are called to bring something incredible into this world, although feel like there's something that's been holding you back. If you have been looking for a sign to get started, let this be your sign. Today is your day. It is time to take a step forward into who you are created to be. This has been a pretty big year of firsts for Jordan and I. We just celebrated our 1-year wedding anniversary. Back in February, we started this podcast, and we are so excited, as we say time and time again, that we have this opportunity to be able to connect with all of you on here. I launched my first book in May. I ran my first half marathon this year, and we had our first retreat in August a couple weeks back. These are things that we've been really excited about to be able to bring to life.
The first example that Ashley talked about was this podcast in general, and what we're going to be talking about today is, like she said, having that passion and that want and that need to do something to feel fulfilled, and actually going out and doing it, taking the steps to making it happen. Way back in the beginning when we started For the Good, and we were always open to see what we could try next and different avenues that we could get into with this business. A huge thing for Ashley and I was bringing up the podcast. And I know in the beginning, Ashley right off the bat said, podcasts are so popular now, and it's a great way to get our voices truly out there, to be able to reach our audience and to be more personal, to put our personal touch on everything instead of just posting, on social media and having people read our words. There's a lot of power in having people hear your voice. So when she brought up this idea, like a lot of people, I know that I had a bit of anxiety, and I was thinking, well, what if I don't know really what I want to say, or if I can't get my point across, or how am I going to be in recording something? I don't know if I can do it. And like a lot of you, that was my moment of saying, well, we're at a crossroads, and either we can jump into this and just go for it, or we can sit back and say, well, what if, and maybe never get to it. So for us, that was a really big step in saying, this is something we definitely want to do. This is something we believe in. We're just going to go all out on it and go for it. And thankfully today, you're listening to us, and it's been something that's been a very big success for us in getting our voices out there. So that's our biggest example of saying, okay, if there's something you really want to do, sometimes you just got to jump in and go for it.
Yeah, this has been a great opportunity to be able to connect with you all in this way, as Jordan said, to really hear our voices and talk with you more on a personal and deeper level. And we are now about 7 months in, and I'm so excited that we took the leap of faith and tried this to be able to connect with you guys.
So as I just mentioned with that example of having that passion and that dream to do something and going for it, what Ashley and I had discussed before recording today is we've kind of narrowed it down to 4 major areas or things that hold us back from taking that step and jumping into it. So we're just going to briefly discuss these 4 things and give you an idea of how to overcome these thoughts when they enter your mind and they try to keep you back from doing what you want to do.
So the first area we are going to talk about is waiting for the perfect time. Because too often we can get ourselves caught up believing that we have to wait until all of the conditions around us are perfect to be able to get started. And as Jordan said, he was talking a little bit more about the podcast, and we were waiting for, everything in our lives to be able to fall into place, to be able to allow us, the time and energy and everything that comes together to be able to take a step into this space. And him and I talked about it, and we said we just have to start. This is something that we have in our hearts to be able to do, to be able to really create this deeper and more meaningful impact with all of you. And we jumped in, and how we talk about, you are so excited and proud of yourself when you do take these steps and you are making your dreams come to life.
I would say in the beginning, I remember when we first talked about it, and I was definitely the one kind of holding back and saying, we'll get to that, we'll do it, but we should really get some other things taken care of first. That can happen in the future. And I remember that Ashley ordered a microphone, and next thing you know, it shows up at our door. As soon as we opened the box, we just said, you know what? There's no reason to wait anymore. We just got to do it. 7 months in, it's become something we look forward to doing, and something that we really rely on now to really get our message out there. And like I said, if we didn't just take that step and plug in that microphone that first day, we could be here 7 months later still saying, well, that's something we'll get to. We'll get to it later on. And that's, a big reminder of just taking that leap and trusting that everything's going to work out.
And as an example, I know that I've talked with different people who they are parents and, they are in a career right now that they don't love, and they have something in their minds and in their hearts that they've always wanted to create and build and have come to pass, and they're waiting, for their kids to reach a certain age or until they grow up and move out of the house. And this is years and years of their life that they're waiting to be able to pass before they get started. And I understand that life can be busy, and I think it's just so important for us to remember that life is happening every second. And if we are not taking advantage of the time that we have been blessed with here, then we don't want to be able to waste that. So every moment that we have is a gift, and it is so important for us to be able to fill ourselves up with really what we want to do. So if you are waiting for the perfect time, know that there is no perfect time. You are going to be waiting and waiting for months, years of your life to be able to create what you have in your heart to do. So today, Jordan and I encourage you to be able to break through this if this has been something that has been holding you back. So the second area that we are going to be talking on is being afraid of what others might think. Too often this can hold us back from getting started because we are afraid of what our parents might think of our business or whatever we have in our minds to be able to create. It can be our parents, as I said, our friends, coworkers, whoever that looks like in your life. But ultimately, we have to remember that our life is our own. And we all have dreams and goals and aspirations in our hearts that are uniquely created just for us. And it is so important for us to be able to fill ourselves up with all of these things that make us happy. Because at the end of the day, your life is your own.
And just a little example to try to tie this together. So with Ashley and I first starting our business and putting ourselves out there and telling the world basically that we're going to be starting this new project, there was those feelings too in the beginning of every time we put a post out, or especially because Ashley and I enjoy writing blogs and getting really personal in our blogs, there was always in the back of our mind just that, well, what if someone just doesn't get it, or they, if people just don't agree with it, or, something like that, just along those lines of if people don't understand what we're trying to do. And what you have to remember is, if this is something that makes you feel good and you're going out and you're doing something that is going to positively affect your life and maybe other people's lives, that's all that matters. If this is something that makes you feel like you're living the life you were meant to live, that's the only notion that you have to hold on to as you're progressing through what you're trying to do.
So this has been a big area for me, especially when it comes to the book that I wrote, because in the book I talk about things that for years of my life I held inside me, and it goes back to grief about after my dad passed away, and also growing up with my dad who battled with substance abuse. These are things that I held tightly into my own life because I was afraid of what other people might think. And last year I went through an incredible transformation within myself that I wrote about in the book, but most importantly, it was something that really changed me in this aspect, because for so many years of my life, I was afraid of sharing these things, and it held me back from talking about it. And when I went through this transformation, I was able to put it out there in a blog, and I received such incredible feedback from family, friends, people on the internet, that just came across the blog and read it and connected with it and said how much it was needed, because too often we do hold ourselves back from talking about certain things in our lives. But most importantly, this is an area that I had some trouble with, is being afraid of what other people might think. And especially when the book published, I remember, people started ordering it, and I started to get nervous because I'm like, okay, this is something that for years of my life I held inside myself, and now people, both strangers and people that are close to me, they're going to get a better idea as to what is in my mind and different experiences that I went through that I didn't necessarily open up about. So I think it is so liberating to be able to open yourself up in this space and talk about different things with people. But going back to this main area, yeah, we can get caught up in being afraid of what others will think. And if we're afraid of this, we are going to stay stuck in this space, and we are not going to be able to grow into the person that we are created here to be. The third area is afraid of failure. People can hold themselves back because they are afraid of getting started and it not working out. But know that everything that you do is leading up to where you are ultimately meant to be, and they are all different ways for you to be able to grow and learn and shift and adjust and really find your space to be able to build off of everything you've learned along the way. So nothing that you have experienced or done is a waste. It can all be used in your future.
The example I came up with when I was thinking about this from my own personal experience is photography for me. Ever since I was in about high school age, I just started falling in love with just taking pictures and going out, and anywhere I was, I just loved capturing the moment of where I was. And I'd come home and I'd edit these pictures, and I just love the feeling I have when I go out and I'm able to explore and really capture what I'm looking at. So all of a sudden I started realizing that years later now, almost 12 years later, I always would tell myself, one day I'm really going to put my focus into doing something with photography, into starting, my own type of business where I can sell my prints to people and put my work out there. What I realized, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate, is when it's in my mind and I'm thinking that this is going to be such a great thing, I love doing it, I'm passionate about it, I just keep holding it off in the future because in my mind it just is such a great idea, and I tell myself I can be so successful doing it. But when it came down to it, anytime I thought about really taking the steps to doing it, I would get that thought of, well, what if I do this and no one likes my pictures, or I can't sell them to anyone? And all of a sudden I start thinking, well, this is something I really enjoy. What if I start looking at it as something that has failed me and something that isn't working for me? And there was almost this fear that I would lose my passion for it and that it just wouldn't be the same. So I always held this in my mind as something I would do in the future, but in reality, I'm not taking the steps to actually doing it. As Ashley and I have been talking, this has come up lately again, and what I realize is, we have a nice camera here that we use. Ashley is, so good at working on the computer and building websites and doing all these things, and she's offering me this help onto starting my own site and doing these things, and I finally realized I have to just do it. And one example is, in the city that we live in, every October they do like a kind of Halloween type setting in our downtown area, and all the businesses put these displays out front. And as we were walking around last October, I just started taking pictures. I realized when I just went and did it, I was so happy and excited to do this. And when we came home, it was the same kind of thing. Instead of taking these photos and just putting them on my personal page and having people say, oh, those look so cool. Ashley said, well, why don't you send it to the local magazine for our city and see what they say? And that was the first time I said, what, yeah, I think this would be a really cool thing to get featured. So I sent them in, and next thing you know, the next month, the local magazine comes out and some of my photos were featured in the magazine. And that was just such a cool moment for me to finally see, something from years before saying, I hope one day I can get my photos out there and people see them, and it's something I love doing. And that was a really big moment for me to finally actually see that starting to happen. And in that moment, I realized, this is something I really enjoy doing. I need to start taking these steps. And, now as Ashley and I talk, it's something that I'm going to be putting more time and energy into. And I think that ties everything together. What we're talking about today is finally saying, what, this is something I want to do. It's time to do it. And that's something I hope you all will see in the near future, something that I'm going to be working on.
Yeah, I think that you gave really great examples. And while you were talking, I picked up on a couple times where you mentioned about talking about your photography and saying, what if? Because I think that a lot of times people focus on the what if in a negative stance, and what follows tends to be something that thinks, well, what if, how we're talking about, I fail? What if it doesn't work out? What if people don't come to my event? What if no one reads my book? I mean, you can go on and on about that. And I think that when we catch ourselves saying what if in our minds, we have to make that shift. And we can shift that into a sense of saying, well, what if it does work out? What does that look like in this space? I mean, I think that people do get caught up in believing that they are afraid of failing, but on the flip side, when we talk about it and think about it in this space, what if your event sells out? What if, all of these great things happen because you took this step forward? That there are chances that you are going to be able to succeed, especially when it comes to things that you hold in your heart so deeply and you know that you are meant here to do, that you are going to succeed. So I think that self-talk, as we talked about in other episodes, is so incredibly important to be able to catch yourself when you are thinking about something more in a negative way about your goals, your dreams, about yourself, and believing on the flip side. So what if all of these things come to pass and I live the life that I know that I'm meant to live? The fourth area is believing you have to know everything. And I know that this is something that is really resonating with me because I remember I started my marketing business in 2016. And when I took this leap of faith to be able to create it and make it come to pass, people would say, do you have a website set up? Do you have business cards? Do you have a logo? All the things that go into having a business. And I said, no, I didn't know anything about creating a website. I didn't have a logo. I didn't have any business cards, but I had this dream in my heart. And to me, that was enough to be able to take this step forward. And I sat there on a web designer for days and days, my first time teaching myself how to create a website and design business cards to hand out. I remember I wrote to different people that I connected with in the past and said, hey, I'm starting this marketing business. If this is something that you could use, some help in. And really, it just started from there. So I think that a lot of times we can get caught up thinking that we have to have everything all aligned and know everything about this business before we take that step forward. But honestly, you just learn as you go. I mean, now I'm building websites for all different kinds of businesses and creating logos for them because I took that first step and taught myself. And I think that this is a really important area that we wanted to be able to talk about today.
That makes me think of, and I don't know the quote exactly, but I remember when I was reading about Thomas Edison and just hearing how all the hours and the days, weeks, months, years that he was up in his workshop. And finally, as the light bulb was being invented and came to be, someone had asked him, well, what happened with those 1,000 times that, you tried and failed to make it work? And he said, I didn't fail 1,000 times. I found 1,000 ways to not make a light bulb. Mm-hmm. And that kind of sums up just the way his mind works. And that's the way we have to be, is all these times that we're trying and it's not going that way, they're not failures. These are things that are teaching you. So as you move forward, it's, okay, now I know not to do that. And you kind of learn by failing. And that's just, the way life is. It's falling down and it's getting back up. And it's same thing like riding a bike. You get up and you take those training wheels off and you're not going inside and thinking of, well, how fast do I need to go to make sure I don't fall? Or what do I have to do to make sure I know how to turn the handlebars? No, you got to get on it. You learn, you fall down, okay, that didn't work this time, I got to try something else. And it's just applying that same mentality through your whole life.
Ultimately, a year from now, you will wish that you started today, because where you are in that space reflects all of the things that you are working on and building and creating in this day that you are given right now. So all of these things that we've talked about, going from things that are holding us back, starts with waiting for the perfect time, afraid of what others might think, afraid of failure, and believing you have to know everything. These are all things that are in our way, and we have to be able to conquer and overcome them and know that we have everything inside of us to be able to make our dreams come to pass. So as we said earlier on in this episode, if you are looking for a sign to get started, let this episode be your sign to be able to make all of your dreams come true. As we mentioned in this episode, this has been a year of firsts for Jordan and I, going from starting this podcast at the beginning of the year in February, publishing a book, doing my first half marathon, and conducting our first recharge retreat in August that ended up being sold out. So, and I'll backtrack just a little bit real quick, but that is something, that I thought, well, what if, people don't sign up for our event or all of these different things, but I had to be able to be intentional about catching myself in this space and saying, this is going to happen. I have this dream in my heart, and Jordan and I worked so hard on it to come to pass, and it ended up being more incredible and more than what we ever prayed on or believed for. So just know that everything in your life is going to work out for the greatest good, and it is up to you to be able to take that action to be able to carry you forward in this day. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on our For the Good podcast. Have a great day, everyone, and make today count.
Thanks for joining us at the For the Good podcast. We would love to connect with you. Join us on Facebook and Instagram at For the Good Official and our blog at 𝙡𝙤𝙤𝙠𝙞𝙣. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode.
Remember, a positive mindset is the beginning of true happiness, not just for the good of the individual, but for the good of the world.